Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with If I Could Choose Only One Work by Artist X, it would have to be work P. Well, Artist X is the conductor Claudio Abbado, who made a lot of really fine recordings and a lot of really not fine recordings, like lousy ones, all throughout his career. So picking one of the best is actually kind of a challenge, but if I had to choose, it would have to be, are you ready? Verdi's Simone Boccanegra. Oh, yes. An opera that really, it had very, very few recordings. I think there was one previous one on EMI that was like wildly out of print, but it had Tito Gobi in it, and then, I don't know, maybe another, I don't know. There were very few. Nobody really knew what it was. Everyone kind of dismissed it because it was written as one of his early pieces, then he revised it later, and then Claudio Abbado recorded it with La Scala forces and an amazing cast. It had Mirella Freni and Jose Carreras and Nikolai Gyarov and Piero Cappuccilli, and really just wonderful singers, and the orchestra and the conducting were amazing. Normally in Verdi operas, they're not thought of as conductors' operas, like Wagner operas. They're singers' operas. But even with great singing, this piece took wing on the Deutsche Grammophon label. It was really an amazing, amazing performance. And Abbado never made a better record. He really didn't. And just to tell you how great it is, I have to tell you what Simone Boccanegra is about, because the plot is such a confused mess. Oh my goodness, it's a total confused mess. So here's the story. Are you ready? I'm reading this from Wikipedia just because it's here and it's easy. So here we go. At the beginning of the story, Fiesco is the Doge of Genoa. It takes place in Genoa, in case you're wondering. He had, the home of salami and other things. He has a daughter, Maria. Maria has fallen in love with Simon Boccanegra, who is a plebeian. God forbid. So he would not be important enough to be allowed to marry her, even though he has become a hero because he has fought pirates and done all kinds of cool things. So Simon and Maria, they have a child, even though they're not married, when she's a young girl. And after the child is born, she's given to an old woman to look after. But one day the old woman dies and the kid disappears and nobody knows what's happened. She's found wandering by the seashore by Count Grimaldi, who took her in and looked after her as if she were his own child. So she thinks her name is Grimaldi, even though she's an orphan, and even though she's the daughter of Simon and Maria, the daughter of Fiesco, who is the Doge. Do we have that clear? Okay, so no one knows what's happened to the child, and Count Grimaldi does not know that she's the daughter of, he thinks she's an orphan. So now the opera starts. All this has already happened. It starts with a prologue. When the opera begins, let's see, here we go. Paolo, the leader of the plebeian party, persuades Pietro, they all begin with P's, to encourage the plebeians led by Paolo and Pietro, to vote for Simon Boccanegra as the new Doge of Genoa. Boccanegra arrives and agrees that he would be the Doge if he were chosen. Simon thinks this would make Fiesco allow him to marry Maria. Now, remember, it's 25 years later, and they've already had a kid, and Maria is getting a little bit long in the tooth, shall we say. So is Simone Boccanegra. But they still want to get married, evidently, after 25 years. For the past 3 months, Fiesco has locked his daughter, Maria, in the palace because she had had a child with Simon. Well, that was 25 years ago, right? Or something like that, somewhere around then. So Maria dies, and we never see her in the opera, by the way. And Fiesco now laments the death of his daughter. Simon begs Fiesco to forgive him. Fiesco does not tell him that Maria has just died. He promises to forgive him only if Simon lets him have his granddaughter. Simon explains this is not 25 years later. It will be in a minute. Ignore me. Simon explains he cannot because the child has disappeared. He goes with Maria to Maria's room and finds she's dead. The people sing happily because Simon is the new Doge. So that's all the prologue. Okay, so now we go 25 years later. Pardon me. So Maria wasn't so long in the tooth. She was lovely, but she's still dead. It didn't make any difference. She died. So the story of Act 1 takes place 25 years later. Simon is still the Doge. He has sent many of his enemies into exile and taken away their property. Count Grimaldi is one of the people who has been exiled. In the Grimaldi castle, Fiesco is calling himself Andrea Grimaldi so that the people don't know who he is for some reason. He is plotting with Simon's enemies to overthrow him. He doesn't know that his granddaughter, Simon's daughter, is the young lady now called Amelia Grimaldi, who is living in the castle. So that's really Simon's daughter. Got it? So at the beginning of Act 1, we see Amelia singing a beautiful song about the morning and the sea and the stars, etc. She has a lover, Gabriele Adorno. Gabriele. There we go. When he arrives, she warns him of the dangers of political plotting. The news is brought that the Doge is coming. Amelia is worried that the Doge will make her marry Paolo. So she asks Gabriella to ask Andrea, who is actually Fiesco. I'm already lost. Immediately for permission for them to marry. Fiesco agrees. He tells Gabriella that she was a poor orphan who had been found. He doesn't realize that it's his own granddaughter. Gabriella says that he does not care about that, so Fiesco blesses the marriage. Simon enters. He tells her that Count Grimaldi is forgiven and can return home. He asks her whether she would like to marry Paolo. That's Amelia. Tells Amelia. But she refuses. She tells him that she is an orphan, and she shows him a locket with a picture of her mother. Simon realizes that Amelia is his long-lost daughter. They are very happy to have found one another. When Paolo enters, Simon tells him he cannot marry her. Paolo is furious and decides to kidnap Amelia. In the next scene, see how juicy this is? In the next scene, we see Simon surrounded by the plebeian and patrician members of the council. This is the famous council chamber scene. It's one of Verdi's great pieces. It has both a bass clarinet and a tam-tam, so you know it's got to be great. They are discussing whether they should make peace with the Republic of Venice. Suddenly a crowd enters, shouting for death to Simon. They are chasing Gabriella. Gabriella confesses that he killed Lorenzino, for trying to kidnap Amelia. As Lorenzino lay dying, he'd said that he had been told by an important person to kidnap her. Adorno guesses that Simon must have ordered the kidnapping. He's about to attack him when Amelia rushes in and stops the fight. Simon arrests Gabriella. He realizes that Paolo must be the real kidnapper and makes everybody, including Paolo, curse him. Paolo and Simon and his daughter are left alone on stage at the end of the act. But it begins with Paolo having to curse him, going, "Sia maledetta!" And then he goes, "Horror, horror, horror, horror." And then at the climax, he goes, "Horror!" with a big crash on the tam-tam, and the orchestra is screaming the violins with this high tremolo thing. Oh, it's just marvelous. The way ABBADO does it, the intensity is just overwhelming. It's incredible. So in Act 2, Paolo is frightened. He's furious. Everyone's furious with everybody in this opera. You notice that? He's furious with Simon and decides he must poison him. Fiesco and Gabriella are brought in. He tells Fiesco he can be free if he murders Simon. Fiesco refuses. Just as Fiesco and Gabriella are about to leave, even though they're prisoners, I don't know, Paolo asks Gabriella whether he knows Amelia is here in the palace having an affair with Simon, that's the 25-year part, because Simon's like an old man by now, right? It's 25 years later, and it's his own daughter. Gabriella is furious, of course, because everyone's furious with everybody. When Amelia enters, she denies the story. She tells Gabriella she loves him and tries to persuade him to leave. But Simon is coming, and Gabriella hides. There's a lot of hiding, too, behind the curtain. You know how they do that. So Amelia tells Simon that she would die for Gabriella. Simon agrees to pardon him. He drinks from a poisoned glass of wine, which Paolo had put on the table, and falls asleep. Gabriella tries to kill him, but Amelia stops him. He's already going to die anyway. Simon wakes up. He tells Gabriella that Amelia is his daughter. Gabriella begs Simon for forgiveness and permission, and promises he will fight for him. There we go. Act 3. Yes, the climax. This takes place in a great hall, which looks out on the harbor. Fiesco has been set free, but Paolo is condemned to death for leading the uprising against the Doge. Paolo tells Fiesco that he has poisoned Simon. Fiesco goes to Simon, who is now dying. The poison is working very, very slowly, as you can tell. Simon recognizes his old enemy, who he thought was dead. He's happy to tell him that Amalia is his long-lost granddaughter. Fiesco feels just terribly sad and tells Simon about the poison. Gabriella and Amelia have just gotten married. They find her father and grandfather are now good old friends. Not that it matters, because Simon is about to die. Simon asks for Gabriella to be the next Doge when he dies. Fiesco goes to the window and announces to the crowd that Gabriella Adorno is now the new Doge and that Simone Boccanegra is dead. E morto. Oh, my goodness, he's terribly morto. So, I mean, that is some complicated plot, right? And it's not even a very long opera. I mean, it really isn't. It's a couple hours, a little bit, And Abbado just conducts the living daylights out of it. It's just a fabulous, awesome, incredible piece, and it's a great work. It's one of Verdi's great unknown works. If you don't know Simone Boccanegra, rush out, get the Abbado recording, sit down with the libretto, because God knows you're going to need it, and enjoy. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.